It was 12:42 in the morning, 8th March, 2014. Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur. 227 passengers, 10 flight attendants, 2 pilots. Destination, Beijing. Everything was normal. Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah was one of the most experienced pilots Malaysian Airlines had. 53 years old, decades of flying, the kind of captain you felt safe with. The flight crossed the Malaysian coastline. Zaharie radioed in, plane at 35,000 feet. All good. Then came the routine handover. Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control said goodbye. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh, 120.9. Good night, Zaharie replied. Good night, MAS 370. Those were the last words anyone ever heard from that plane. Seconds later, MH370 vanished from radar. No distress call, no warning, no trace. 239 people disappeared into thin air, and nobody till this day knows exactly what happened. This became the biggest aviation mystery the world had ever seen. Merely 30 seconds after entering Vietnamese airspace, the plane vanished from radar. Just like that, gone. It was 1:21 a.m. Now the air traffic control in Kuala Lumpur did not immediately notice this. They assumed the plane had simply flown out of their radar range and entered Vietnam's airspace. Nothing unusual about that. But on the Vietnamese side, the air traffic control saw MH370 enter their airspace and then suddenly disappear from their radar too. They tried to communicate with the plane. No response. They kept trying for 18 minutes. Still nothing. Vietnamese controllers then informed Kuala Lumpur that MH370 had disappeared. Now, in situations like this, the standard protocol is that Kuala Lumpur's Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center should be notified within 1 hour of a plane going missing. But that did not happen. It was only after 4 hours had passed that an emergency response finally began. By this point, it was 6:32 in the morning. The exact time the plane should have been landing in Beijing, but it had not landed anywhere. Search operation was launched immediately. If you look at the map, the plane was flying from Malaysia to Beijing, with Vietnam and the South China Sea in between. So, obviously, the search began in the South China Sea. 34 ships and 28 aircraft from 7 different countries joined this international effort, but there was no sign of the plane anywhere. Nothing. Then about 4 days later, on 12th March, something very surprising came to light. A military radar had actually spotted the plane that night, and according to this military radar, the plane was last seen at 2:22 in the morning. But here is the shocking part. It was not above the South China Sea. It was near the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, to the west of Malaysia, above the Strait of Malacca, and it was flying north, away from Beijing, completely in the opposite direction. This left everyone stunned. Where had this plane gone? Had it flown towards India? Had it crashed somewhere in the Himalayas or Kazakhstan? Then, a few more days later, a new piece of evidence emerged from satellite data. It was found that the plane had been automatically trying to communicate with a satellite. Now this is actually quite common. Large aircraft like the Boeing 777 regularly try to establish contact with satellites to make communication easier. Think of it like your phone automatically trying to connect to a known Wi-Fi network. Same concept. But the problem was that when MH370 communicated with the satellite, it only tried to log in. It tried to establish a connection. No location data was actually transmitted. The satellite only knew that this plane had tried to reach out. Nothing more, no coordinates, no details. But scientists and investigators had an idea. They thought that when the satellite received the communication signal, it would have turned its antenna in the direction of the plane. So they took the angle of that antenna, did their calculations, and tried to estimate the location of the plane. They could not pinpoint an exact location, but they could estimate a range. A circle. The plane could be anywhere within that circle when it tried to communicate, and the plane tried to communicate with the satellite 7 times. So there were 7 different circles. These are known as satellite handshakes. Each circle shows the position at the time of each attempted communication. The last circle, the 7th one, showed the most recent point of contact, the last known moment of this airplane's existence. And this circle was enormous. It covered a huge area, from Kazakhstan and China to Indonesia and Australia, and a vast stretch of open ocean in between. The plane could have been anywhere within this final circle. After this, investigators did more calculations. They factored in the speed of the plane, the remaining fuel, and estimated that the plane was most likely on a specific arc of that final circle. This became famously known as the 7th arc. The 7th arc sits roughly 2,000 kilometers west of Australia, a massive, remote, barely explored stretch of ocean. If you look at the map, you can see the satellite position used for calculations. The outermost dotted circle showing the maximum distance the plane could have flown with its remaining fuel, and the curved red arc, which is the 7th arc, the most likely crash location. Several search operations were conducted across the highlighted areas. The orange zone was the priority search area, where the most intensive searches were done. By April 2014, surface searches were stopped, because if the plane had crashed, it would have sunk. It would not be floating. So, deep ocean searches began. This became the largest and most expensive search operation ever conducted. For weeks, months, and years, teams searched the depths of the Indian Ocean and found nothing. After spending $160 million, the operation was officially called off, deemed a failure. But there was one piece of good news in all of this. In July 2015, the first piece of debris from the plane was actually found. It washed up on the island of Réunion, east of Madagascar. It was the flaperon of the plane, a piece of the wing, broken, but confirmed to be from MH370. Then, in 2018, an American company called Ocean Infinity signed a new contract with the Malaysian government. Their deal was simple. If they do not find the plane, they will not charge any fees. No fine, no fee. They had highly advanced underwater surveillance vehicles and began mapping the ocean floor in the search area. They found underwater volcanoes, cliffs, mountains, but no plane. Their mission also ultimately failed. Investigators ran background checks on all passengers and both pilots. And from these investigations, several theories emerged about what could have actually happened. The first question was, how did the plane disappear from radar in the first place? Either there was an electrical failure, or some kind of accident or a technical malfunction that caused the equipment to stop working, or someone on the plane, a passenger or a pilot, manually switched off the transponder, deliberately. The first theory points to Captain Zaharie Shah himself. It is suggested that the captain intentionally disabled communication and crashed the plane into the ocean. But why would he do that? Some people say he may not have been in the right mental state. Some believe he was suicidal. Others suggest it was a deliberate act. There are a few points used to support this theory. First, the plane turned almost 180 degrees from Vietnam back towards Malaysia. Autopilot cannot do this on its own. A pilot would have to do this manually. Second, the plane flew directly along the border between Thailand and Malaysia. Some believe this was deliberate, done to avoid the radar of both countries. Third, and this is the most interesting point, Zaharie Shah had a flight simulator at his home. Not unusual for a pilot, but on this simulator, he had mapped out a path that was remarkably similar to the path MH370 actually flew. But the official in charge of the search operation completely rejected this theory. He said Zaharie was a highly experienced and widely respected pilot. He had no family problems, no financial problems, no past behavior that would raise any concern. There was simply no reason to suspect him. If a pilot wanted to deliberately crash a plane, there would normally be some sign in their behavior or their life beforehand. Nothing like that was found. The second theory was that there were hijackers or terrorists on board. When this came up, 2 passengers immediately came under suspicion. Both were Iranian and both were traveling on stolen passports. One had stolen an Italian man's passport. The other had stolen an Austrian man's passport. Both passports had been stolen in Thailand. Investigations revealed that these men were not actually terrorists. They were simply trying to reach Europe and settle there. One of them had his mother waiting for him in Hamburg, Germany, and Interpol confirmed that they were almost certainly not terrorists. So this theory was also rejected. The third theory is considered the most probable. It is suggested that the passengers and crew of MH370, including both pilots, lost consciousness due to oxygen deficiency. The entire plane passed out and then ran on autopilot. The autopilot kept the plane flying until the fuel ran out, and then the plane crashed into the ocean. How could this oxygen deficiency have happened? Several explanations exist. Some say there may have been an electrical fire in the cockpit, which disabled multiple systems, including the transponder. Others believe a sudden depressurization event caused the oxygen loss. Some even suggest hijackers may have tried to deliberately create an oxygen deficiency. A likely sequence of events based on this theory goes something like this. As soon as the plane entered Vietnamese airspace, the pilots noticed something wrong, a malfunction. So, Captain Zaharie turned the plane 180 degrees to head back to Malaysia. But as the plane began flying back, a catastrophic accident occurred. Oxygen levels dropped suddenly. Everyone on board lost consciousness. Multiple systems failed. The plane then flew on autopilot for hours, eventually turning southward over the Indian Ocean until the fuel ran out and it crashed into the ocean 2,000 kilometers west of Australia. There were other theories too. Aliens, the US military shooting it down, Vladimir Putin knowing the location, a new Bermuda Triangle. But none of these have any real credibility. Many years passed, and then in 2022, something significant happened. Richard Godfrey, a retired aerospace engineer, claimed he had cracked this mystery. He used a radio wave technology called WSPR-net, combining it with data from a British satellite, figures from Boeing, and analysis from Australian oceanographers. He built a computer program that can detect the flight paths of aircraft by analyzing weak radio wave signals and their reflections. Once a radio wave is emitted from a source, it bounces off the atmosphere, and weak signals travel onward. If an aircraft passes through the path of such a wave, it can be detected. Using this technology, Richard calculated that MH370 is sitting exactly on the 7th arc at a specific pinpointed location. Approximately 4 kilometers underwater. Now you might say, but that area was already searched. And you would be right. The most expensive Australian-led search operation did cover that general region. But it is possible they missed it. And importantly, Ocean Infinity's second operation, which had more advanced instruments, had not actually searched this exact point. Richard is so confident in his calculations that he has narrowed the location down to within 40 nautical miles. He has proposed that a new search operation be conducted within this radius, and the plane would be found. This would be a very small search area compared to everything done before. A drift analysis was also conducted, examining ocean currents to see where debris from a crash in that location would have traveled over time. And according to this analysis, pieces would have drifted towards Madagascar and the surrounding islands, which is exactly where debris has been recovered. Till date, 27 pieces of the plane have been found across various islands around the world. This drift analysis aligns with Richard's findings. Some experts have criticized Richard's methodology, saying it may not be accurate enough to pinpoint a crash site. But Richard believes that if a search operation begins now within 1 year, we would have a definitive answer. And perhaps finally the world's greatest aviation mystery would be solved.